Hi there. Welcome to the call tonight. I'm Anna Galland. I'm the Executive Director of MoveOn.org Civic Action. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. So as you know, something big happened in the last week. The organizations here on this call tonight, MoveOn.org Civic Action, Democracy for America, and our friends, especially in New York at the Working Families Party, suspended the Run, Warren, Run campaign after delivering over 365,000 signatures from people around the country to Senator Warren, asking her to run for president. What this meant in concrete terms was that two terrific college students and organizers who'd been active in their home states of Iowa and New Hampshire traveled personally to Washington, D.C. for this delivery. And they were MoveOn member Saba Hafiz from Iowa and Democracy for America member August Tucker from New Hampshire. Both of them had helped lead Run, Warren, Run efforts in their home states. So now we're ready to shift our focus from this terrific campaign to working alongside Senator Warren and other progressive populists on the key issue fights that lie ahead of us, like fighting to defeat fast-track negotiating authority for that big giveaway to corporate power known as the Trans-Pacific Partnership Trade Agreement, as well as other vital issues like fighting the student debt crisis, which Senator Warren spoke about just today, and expanding Social Security. So more to come in our conversation. First, I want to introduce Charles Chamberlain. He's the Executive Director of Democracy for America, which has been our close partner in the Run, Warren, Run campaign.
Thank you, Anna, and thank you, MoveOn members, for your leadership in this fight. DFA members have been right by your side since day one, but we couldn't have been there if you didn't lead the way. So thank you for having the vision to launch this campaign last December. And what a campaign it's been. Led by inspiring DFA members and MoveOn members around the country over the past 6 months. Together, we've signed up more than 365,000 Americans who believe Senator Warren's vision and track record would make her a great candidate for president. We've opened field offices in Iowa, Des Moines, and Cedar Rapids, and in New Hampshire and Manchester. We hired field organizers in both states and built a network of local grassroots leaders in these key early states committed to encouraging Senator Warren to run. We recruited more than 60 state legislators and local party leaders from Iowa and New Hampshire to join the Run, Warren, Run effort and calling for a competitive Democratic primary. We held more than 400 events, including rallies, house parties, teach-ins, honkin' waves, and other events in nearly every state, all of which generated thousands of news stories elevating Senator Warren's voice and solutions for fighting income inequality. Our campaign has been endorsed by dozens of prominent organizational leaders, elected officials, cultural figures, including people like Mark Ruffalo, the Hulk himself, Van Jones, Susan Sarandon, and Lawrence Lessig. And we're proud of all that we've accomplished together. We made our best case, and we made it well. And so now we've suspended the campaign, and we're looking forward to standing alongside Senator Warren in the fights ahead. But MoveOn and DFA members didn't do this alone. The leaders and members of the New York Working Families Party joined the Run, Run, Run campaign early on and provided critical support in both the national media and on the ground in New York. And with that, I'd like to introduce Dan Cantor, National Director of the Working Families, to wrap up this quick campaign summary. Dan, take it away.
Thanks, Charlie. Listen, no one on this call will be surprised by the following statement. The 2016 election will focus in large part on the question of jobs and economic justice. And our task is to make sure that every candidate, Democrat and Republican, is forced to choose which side they're on the giant trade deal like the TPP, on the fight for $15 in a union, on debt-free college education, paid family leave, and much more. Our collective goal, it seems to me, is to press candidates to side with working families on all of these issues. Fast-tracking the TPP is a perfect example. It's fundamentally about who gets to write the rules of our economy, and it's best understood as yet another power grab by corporations who want to rewrite the rules for their own benefit, as if the current rules weren't already rigged in their favor. At Working Families, we believe the economy needs to work for all of us, not just the wealthy and well-connected, and it was Senator Warren and groups on this call and many others who helped raise the flag on this issue and turn it into a real fight when it was expected to just sail through Congress unquestioned. So with that, I will return it to Anna Galland.
Thanks, Dan. Again, this is Anna Galland of MoveOn. And as I said, we have now, and as my friends have also said, we've now suspended this campaign, which has been so exciting and impactful. So I do want to talk quickly about why all of your work made such a profound difference in our country over the last 6 months. 3 things. Number 1, we built 2016's first and biggest on-the-ground operation in Iowa and New Hampshire. And we showed that voters and activists in those key states, those agenda-defining states, are hungry for bold progressive fighters. Second, our work together over the last 6 months helped to lift up Senator Warren's vitally important message. We helped to make sure that her agenda would not be lost in all the everyday chatter, including the 2016 sort of political chatter. From expanding Social Security to fighting student debt to stopping fast track on the Trans-Pacific Partnership, Elizabeth Warren is a fighter for the little guy, and she now has even more of the kind of agenda-setting, debate-defining power that is normally reserved for just potential party nominees. So we helped lift up her message. And third and finally, what we achieved together through our work in the last 6 months is that we together sent a message to candidates across the political spectrum showing that economic populism is an issue on the march, and in particular to Democrats. We now have a contested Democratic presidential primary among several candidates, all of whom have in some way echoed the vital Warren message that the system is rigged. And more broadly, we've shown all Democrats that if you take on the special interests rigging the system, we will get your back. Everybody knows that the insiders are supposed to choose the candidates, but what we showed in the last 6 months is that grassroots progressives are ready to fight for and lift up those candidates who refuse to bow down to those who want to corrupt our political system. That's a huge win. I'm just so proud of the amazing work that we've done and the achievements that we've, gotten together. So I want to invite you to join tonight's conversation. You can post questions for Senator Warren, who will be joining us in one moment, on the MoveOn or Democracy for America or Working Families Party Facebook pages. You can tweet them at MoveOn or at DFA Action or at Working Families, or you can email warrenquestions@moveon.org. So now, I'm very excited to say that Senator Warren is joining us here. She needs no introduction, given our work together over the last 6 months trying to introduce her to others. But we've invited her here to talk with us, now that we've suspended this campaign, to talk with us about the fight against fast track on the TPP trade agreement, as well as her vital work to end the crisis on student debt, as she focused on just in an important speech earlier today. So we've asked her to give us an update and tell us what we can do to help, to stand with her in all the fights ahead. Senator Warren, welcome.
Well, thank you very much, Anna, and thank you, Charlie, and thank you, Dan. I really appreciate your inviting me to be here tonight. It is good to be here. I know that some of you on this call were hoping that I'd be getting a new job next year, but I really want you to know I love my job representing Massachusetts in the United States Senate. And I also want you to know I'm working my heart out on the issues that matter to all of us. The game's rigged, and we're fighting back, and that's not going to change. You know, part of the reason that I love my job is because of you. I am grateful for everything that MoveOn, Democracy for America, and the Working Families Party, and the people on this call have done. Together, we are determined to make a difference. Now, I know that some of the fights that we've taken on have very steep odds, and especially in today's political climate in Washington. But they are the fights that matter. They matter powerfully, and they are worth taking on. For me, it's never been about one person or one campaign. It's about all of us fighting shoulder to shoulder to level the playing field for working families. And it's about the simple truth that even when the odds are against you, sometimes you have to stand up and fight. The truth I learned early on is pretty basic. If you don't fight, you can't win. So we need to fight, and we need to fight hard. And I wanted to be here tonight because we are in some really big fights right now. Fights that have consequences for jobs, for our economy, for the environment, for human rights, even for the rules on Wall Street. And I know that when it comes to the biggest, hardest, most important fights, I can count on groups and the people on this call to wade right in. So, Anna, since you invited me to do it, I want to focus first of all on trade. It looks like the House is going to vote on fast track on Friday, and that means we got to get to work right now. So let me just give everybody on the call a little recap. The president right now is finishing up negotiations on TPP. That's the massive trade agreement with about 40% of the world's economy. Now, we've seen what happened in past trade agreements like NAFTA. 1 million jobs lost and more than 20 years of stagnant wages for middle-class families. President Obama says this time it will be different, but he won't let you see the deal. It's classified. Journalists, policy experts, the media, individual citizens like you don't have any access at all. And even people like me, senators and other government officials, we can see it, but we legally can't even talk about it. I think that is fundamentally wrong. A part of this, though, is that the deal is secret from you, but it hadn't been secret from everyone else. You know who does get to see the drafts of the trade deal? The big corporate interests. There are 28 trade advisory groups that have been working on TPP. And who's on those trade advisory groups? 85% of the members are either senior corporate executives or corporate lobbyists. That's not the trade deal that we can trust. President Obama says he will release the text of TPP to the public, but only after Congress passes this fast-track agreement. So what that really means is that before you can see the deal, Congress has to agree to voluntarily give up its power to make any amendments to the deal and reduce our ability to block a bad deal. So I think that's a real problem. But I want to add one more piece, and that is this fast track that the House will be voting on Friday won't apply to just one trade deal, this deal coming up with Asia, the one called the TPP, Trans-Pacific Partnership. This fast track would apply to any trade deal cut by any president over the next 6 years. I sure hope that a Democrat wins the White House in 2016 and in 2020. Probably everyone on this call hopes that. But what if we lose? What if our country elects one of the anti-worker, climate change denying, Wall Street accountability hating Republicans who are bought and paid for by powerful interests? Well, I'll tell you what would happen. That Republican would have the same power to push through other bad trade agreements long after President Obama leaves the White House. And Congress would have little ability to stop or amend it. That's scary. Without knowing who's in the White House, I think it is just plain irresponsible for Democrats to sign off on a 6-year fast-track deal. So we're going to need help on trade. And look, we're in there slugging it out on trade, but I also want to say trade is just one of the many issues that we're working on together. You know, it's graduation season right now. I gave 2 graduation speeches last week. Kids all across this country are graduating from high school. They're getting ready to go off to college. They're graduating from community college or 4-year college, getting ready to start in the world. We have a serious problem. The cost of college is out of control. Students and their families are loading up on more and more debt just to make it through. 2/3 of students today are borrowing money to get through school, and their average debt just for undergrad is about $30,000. Low-income families and middle-income families are hit the hardest. Exploding debt is stopping more and more young people from moving out of their parents' house, from saving for a down payment, from buying homes, buying cars, starting small businesses, saving for retirement, making the purchases that make our economy grow. The debt is tough on young people, but whether you're a student or a parent or a grandparent of a student, or even if you don't have any kids at all, student loan debt matters. It is a drag on our economy that affects all of us. So today, I refer to the speech that I've given. I introduced a comprehensive set of policy ideas to try to make college affordable for everyone and to give all of our kids a debt-free option. a chance to get a good education without getting crushed by student loan debt. I outlined a lot of ideas, but basically I see it as a 1-2 punch. The first part is about resources. State cuts to higher education must stop, because when states cut support, tuition goes up and families are left to pick up the bill. If states won't invest in their schools, then they shouldn't be able to get federal aid. And I believe the federal government has to step up too. The government should not be making a profit off student loans, period. We need to step up on Pell Grants. Pell Grants used to cover 3/4 of the cost of college. Now it's only 1/3. And without Pell, smart, hardworking, poor kids will see their opportunities shrink to the vanishing point. But it's more than just putting money into the system. There's a second part to the punch. If they have more resources, schools need to step up too. Colleges need to have a little skin in the game for their student loans. We need to make sure that federal aid is spent on education, not on marketing budgets, and that it's used to bring costs down. There are a lot of details to this. I will be putting them out more. If you have a chance, I hope you get to look at this speech. But I want to make sure everybody sees the heart of it. Affordable college with a real debt-free option isn't a dream. It's a real opportunity. The lobbyists aren't going to work for it. It happens only if we work for it, if we fight for it together. And that's part of why I wanted to be here tonight. So there is so much we could talk about. We need to protect and expand Social Security, and we're working on ways to do that. In March, I got 42 senators on the record committed to this fight to expand Social Security. We need to invest in the NIH and basic medical research for autism and Parkinson's and Alzheimer's and ALS and diabetes and cancer and heart disease. Right now, funding to the NIH budget doesn't even keep up with inflation. So I've got a bill on this, the Medical Innovation Act, to increase funding to the NIH by requiring more accountability from giant drug manufacturers when they break the law. Again, we can do this, but only if we're willing to stand up to some very powerful interests. And every time we have this conversation, I have to go back to it. We will never give up on holding Wall Street accountable. Let me say that one again. Never give up on holding Wall Street accountable. We have seen how Wall Street and their friends in Washington plan to repeal Dodd-Frank. Not one big sweeping piece of legislation, but a chip here and a gouge there, all hidden away in the fine print of must-pass bills. But nobody on our side is going to look the other way. We're ready any time, any place to stand up, speak out, and fight to hold the big banks accountable. Okay, and one more that I've got to say. We got to take back the Senate. We need to elect progressive champions, folks like Russ Feingold, who will fight side by side with us for the issues we care about. Now, I wasn't sent here to Washington to fight for giant corporations. I was sent here to fight for people like you. And that's what I'm doing, and that's why I still need your help right here in the Senate. We make each other stronger, and that's how we're going to make change. So that's it, Anna.
Thank you, Senator Warren. That is fantastic. This is Charles Chamberlain, Executive Director of Democracy for America. Ann is here too, but I'm taking over with the question and answer section of this call. But I really want to thank you for that. I think you really laid out some clear policy principles, ideas, things that we need to be fighting for, and exactly the kind of things that MoveOn members, DFA members are going to be spending our time over the course of the next year and a half and beyond fighting alongside you to help make sure that we can win as many of these fights as possible. I do want to start right away with some of the questions that we've had coming in tonight. I think this won't surprise you, but the most common question that we're getting from a lot of members, including Sheila, a DFA member from Duval, Washington, and Elizabeth, a Working Families member in California, but they want to know specifics on what we can actually do in these final days. If the vote's going to be Friday, what can we do right now to stop the TPP from being approved in the House?
Okay, great question. Thank you, Sheila. Thank you. Did you say Duval on that one? That's great. So here's what we need you to do. We need you to call, email, tweet, Facebook your members of Congress right now. We want you to tell them vote no on fast-tracking trade. Tell them you want to see the trade deal before they give away their rights to change it. Now, I want to remind everybody on this call, even though there are workers' groups, environmental groups, human rights groups, legal experts, and progressive groups that have opposed fast track, trade does not fall neatly into a Republican-Democratic division. Some Democrats are going to support fast track, and some Republicans are going to vote against it. So this is one of those things that no matter where you live, no matter who represents you, we need you to make your voices heard. And it's not just your voice. Ask your family, ask your friends, ask your neighbors to get involved. Think about your people you know who live in other states. This is about grassroots democracy, the thing that the people on this call do best. If enough people speak out, we can make a difference. That's how we're going to change things here in Washington. So I'm counting on all of you on this one.
I really love your point, Senator, about calling your representative, even if you live in a district with a crazy Republican. This is one of those places where some of these Tea Party Republicans actually could be an ally for us and by voting against this bill. So no question, pick up the phone tomorrow, make the phone calls that you have to make so that we can beat this. Senator, a follow-up question on your debt-free college speech today we got from Larry, a DFA member in Columbia, Missouri. Here's what he wrote. I'm a military veteran and recent grad. Despite my GI Bill benefits, I find myself shouldering significant student debt from undergrad and grad school. I've seen action to help current and future student loan borrowers, but what would you do to help graduates that are already working under the burden of crushing student debt?
All right. So this one is pretty straightforward. It was part of the speech today, and it's been part of what we've been working on now for the last nearly 2 years. And that is we need to refinance the outstanding student loan debt and bring that debt burden down. We're now at $1.3 trillion in outstanding student loan debt. That is how much people already owe, people who've already made it all the way through. And the problem is it continues to grow. In just the last year, student loan debt has grown by an additional $100 billion. Think about that, in just 1 year. And here's the part that really will make you choke. Interest rates on these student loans are way above the break-even point for the federal government. Some of these loans, in fact, are out there at 6%, 7%, 8%, 9%. There are some at 10, 11, depending on when you got your loans and the kind of loan you've got. The United States government is making billions of dollars in profits off the backs of students who are trying to repay their student loan debt. We have to refinance the student loan debt. Now, we came close in the Senate last year. We got 58 votes. We even picked up 3 Republicans on it, got every single Democrat, both independents, but we didn't make it on through. The Republicans filibustered it and blocked us from refinancing student loans and bringing down that interest rate, which would at least help people pay off faster and pay off easier. This is one we're just going to have to keep fighting on. One last point I want to make on this. We made this an issue. This issue nobody was talking much about this 2 years ago. We got out there. We fought to get student loan debt refinanced. We put it on the agenda. We stayed after the Department of Education so that they're working on the companies that do the debt collection, that service the loans. But we got to get this one through the United States Congress. And this has got to be part of our education package and a big part of what we ask every candidate. Are you prepared to support refinancing student loans? Are you prepared to support making college more affordable in tangible ways? Are you prepared to support finding a path for students to make it through college debt-free? So we've got our work cut out for us, but we're not going to back up on this one.
It's excellent, and there's no question that we can have an impact on this. And you're so right about a year ago, nobody was talking about debt-free college, and now it's something that's being embraced thanks to your leadership, thanks to the leadership of MoveOn, DFA, working families, progressives all around the entire country that have been working hard on this. And I think a great example of how we can have success on this is what we did just a couple of years ago in the same way with expanding Social Security. Once again, following your leadership, we took the debate from cuts to a centrist position of no cuts and the progressive position of expanding Social Security. It's really powerful leadership, and we're ready to back you up again with debt-free college, no question about it. My third question for you is from a MoveOn member, Nick, in Maryland. Here's his question. Many of us are concerned about racial disparities in the criminal justice system and criminal justice reform. I understand that bipartisan efforts are underway to craft legislation in the Senate that can start to address this challenge. Senator Warren, how important do you feel this issue is, and what can we all do to help make a difference on it?
I think this is a powerfully important issue, and I'm really glad you raised this. This is one we need not just to talk about more, but we need to put some real energy behind. And I just want to put this in a little bit larger context. I agree with criminal justice reform. There is a great deal we can do, and exactly as you said, we're starting to actually get some bipartisan traction on this one. We need to talk about the mandatory minimum sentences. We need to talk about what we're doing to communities with incarceration. But I want to say something a bit more about a larger frame around this. And that is about what it means to see millions of people who find themselves struggling to make it in a system that is systematically and deliberately rigged against them. We see this every day. We see those who try to make it harder for people to get an education, those who want to take away votes, those who believe that justice and dignity are reserved only for some people. We saw it when we saw the court strike down a key section of the Voting Rights Act. Young men die in police custody. Poverty has borne down harder on families of color. And that's a reality this country must acknowledge. Last month I did a forum in Baltimore with Representative Elijah Cummings to discuss in particular the financial difficulties in communities of color. And the statistics we reviewed were shocking. In 2013, median wealth for white families was $142,000. Median wealth for African American families was $11,000. Now, just think for a second about that difference. It's not just the short-term impact of economic blows. It's about the impact of repeated blows across generations. It's about getting a little bit better mortgage in a little better neighborhood for some people, a little better chance to go to college, a little more access to credit to start a small business, and about everyone who didn't have the access, didn't have the opportunities, who got left behind. Look at housing. After decades of being ripped off, after redlining and restricted deed covenants and land sales contracts that were designed to cheat black families, African Americans and African American neighborhoods were left with less and less wealth. And then, in the run-up to the financial crisis, Wall Street targeted African American families with the worst subprime mortgages. They also hit Latino families hard. When the 2008 crisis hit, then African American and Latino families got hit harder again. And this isn't urban legend. In 2012, Wells Fargo paid the Justice Department $175 million to avoid prosecution for charging higher rates and fees to minority borrowers than they did to white borrowers. The Department of Justice, I remember at the time, they called it a racial surtax, and they were right. Predatory lenders, look at what goes on there. Many Americans rely on the traditional banking system, on credit unions for their basic banking, like depositing and cashing checks and paying their bills. But millions of Americans can't access that system. For some, opening an account with a $100 balance isn't easy. Big banks put branches, they're pulling them out of poor neighborhoods, relocating to richer neighborhoods. People turn to payday lenders, to check cashers, to title loan outfits to do their bills, and the results are crushing. This is about choices. Our country needs to make better choices so all, and I mean all, of our children have a chance to succeed. It is up to us to fight so that kids can walk down the street safely, so our justice system works, to put an end to poverty and oppression, so the government doesn't just serve the wealthiest individuals and the richest corporations, so that our government serves all our families. That's what this is really about.
Excellent. Very powerful. Thank you for that. I think we should wrap it up here with a last question I've got from MoveOn member Patrick M. In a world so overwhelmed by corporate power, what can ordinary citizens do to affect real progressive change around issues like climate change and wealth inequality? And I would add myself, Senator Warren, how do you keep yourself hopeful in the face of all these major challenges we have?
Oh, okay. All right. Good question. But I'm going to tell you a story. How about if we'll wrap this up with a good story?
Perfect.
So you all may remember in the 90s and in the 2000s, some of the biggest financial institutions in this country had figured out they could build a business model around cheating people. They would trick them, trap them. First it started on credit cards. They moved to mortgages and payday loans and a lot of different financial devices. And they raked in billions of dollars. And I was enormously frustrated during this because there were a lot of laws that should have stopped them. But the laws were scattered among 7 different agencies. No one agency said, this is my job. And as a result, they just weren't used. So I had this idea for a new consumer agency. You gather up all those laws, you put it with one agency, you make it their responsibility to enforce those laws. Don't give them something else. Make that their responsibility, and then hold that agency accountable. Give them the tools, then hold them accountable. So I thought this could work. So I went around and talked to everybody I could about this idea. This is now in the mid-2000s, 2007, 2008. And I came down to Washington. I tried to make appointments with people, go in and talk to them. And people told me 2 things. The first was, that is a great idea. You could actually make a difference with this. And the second was, don't do it. They always said don't do it because they said the big banks will never let it happen. They will do everything they can to defeat it, and you cannot possibly win. So what do you do in the face of something like that? Well, I'll tell you what we did. We fought back, and we got organized. MoveOn was there. DFA was there. Working Families was there. The AFL-CIO was there. SEIU was there. Consumers Union was there. In the space of a few months, we had gotten more than 100 groups to come together, and it was a fight. The big banks came at us with everything they had. They were spending more than $1 million a day lobbying against us. But you all know how this story comes out. In the end, David beat Goliath. We got that consumer agency. And I just want to say this off to the side. That little consumer agency has been up and running about 4 years now. It has already forced the biggest financial institutions in this country to return more than $5 billion to families they cheated. So, yeah, the influence of money in Washington is dangerous. Washington works great if you can afford to hire armies of lobbyists and lawyers. And Citizens United is a threat to our democracy. But don't forget, we've stood up to powerful interests before, and we've won. We have a good, strong consumer agency now, and we have it because of people like you, people on this call. We have it because of groups like these groups. We did it before, and we can do it again. So, when somebody tells me you can't change, money runs everything, I just smile and think about the consumer agency and think about the power of what we can do. We work together.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Senator Warren. This is Anna Gallant from MoveOn jumping back in to take the reins to conclude our call. I should say thank you, Senator Warren. I want to give everyone on the phone one more thing that you should know about as a next step. In addition to picking up the phone and calling your member of Congress, whether you're in a quote-unquote red district or deep blue, you can make a difference in a really pivotal fight for really in a bigger debate over how much power we're going to hand to corporations versus our governments to set the rules for that all of us then have to live by. So pick up the phone, call your member of Congress over the next 2 days, tell them that you stand against fast track on the TPP. So let's do that together, shall we? Let's do it together. And one other next step I want everyone here to know about, we need to keep building on the work that we've been doing together over the last 6 months and before that in pushing a vision like Senator Warren's to fix our economy and our democracy. We are going to keep fighting alongside Senator Warren. And in partnership with former Labor Secretary Robert Reich, we are going to go around the corporate media to make sure we can keep getting our message out. MoveOn is producing a series of short and easy-to-understand videos on common sense but really big ideas that could help make our economy work better for everyone. Many of those ideas we've already been fighting on with Senator Warren and will continue fighting with her. They're ideas like expanding Social Security and setting a $15 an hour minimum wage and making polluting corporations pay for the privilege of polluting our air. And we'll be talking as well about why incarceration is bad for our economy, in addition to being inhumane and stacked against communities of color in this country. So we've already got over 6 million views on these videos that we've been producing without any help from any mainstream media. You can go to MoveOn.org, watch those videos, share the ones you like best, and keep an eye on your MoveOn email. We're going to be getting together in house parties in late July to watch them together and talk about next steps. So with that, I want to really wrap up our call. Thank you so much, Senator Warren, for all you do. I think you said it powerfully that, David can beat Goliath. We can win real victories for American families if we fight, if we stand up for our values, if we stand together against the corrupting influence of corporate lobbyists in Washington, if we fight for our democracy, against cynicism, against corruption, against poverty. We can win, and we will win. And we thank you so much for the inspiration that you give so many millions of Americans out there, including MoveOn members, including Democracy for America members, including Working Families Party members. So with that, thank you again for joining us.
Anna, thank you so much. I just want to say one more time, thanks for having me on this call today. Thanks for the calls that everyone has made and all the petitions that people have signed and all the actions that people have taken to fight for working families, to fight for students and seniors, to fight for little kids and big kids and everyone else who can't hire a fancy lobbyist or write a $50 million check to get Congress's attention. What you do is special. You make democracy work. You give us all hope. And most of all, you make us stronger. We are going to need your strength. We're going to make each other stronger. So thank you. I'm very grateful. But now there's work to be done, so let's get to it.
Let's go do it. Thank you, Senator Warren.
Thank you, Senator, and thank you, DFA, MoveOn, and Working Families Party's members for participating. Everybody have a great night.